This story is unbelievably f***ed up, and fair warning, the video and details here are incredibly disturbing. This is Taylor Shaw Business, a 25-year-old woman out of Wisconsin. Police say last year, Taylor and her 25-year-old boyfriend Shad Therian smoked meth and went to his mother's house so they could have BDSM. These chains were allegedly involved in their romp, but things soon took an incredibly dark turn. Prosecutors allege Taylor used those chains to strangle Shad to death and then took kitchen knives and dismembered his body. Taylor then left, and later, Shad's mother discovered the grisly scene and called the police. This body cam, just released, shows police investigating the house. This officer on the steps stares and turns off his flashlight as he notices a bucket. The officer then leans over the bucket, turns on his flashlight, and reacts. Inside the bucket was Shad's severed head, along with his penis and testicles. The details get even more graphic. Investigators say the organs had been taken out of Shad's body, his foot had been shoved into his chest cavity, and inside of Taylor's van, some of his remains were found inside of a crock pot. Taylor was arrested and is now on trial, and that body cam footage was just played for the jury. And at the moment the court discussed whether to show images of Shad's head in a bucket to the jury, Taylor sat and laughed. Taylor faces several charges, including first-degree intentional homicide and mutilating a corpse. She's pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity.
Shout out to Angie over at Notice News, man. This is very disturbing. What would make them want to go do meth and have that type of sex? You know what I'm saying? Where it mentally made her go somewhere she probably never been. But at the same time, I hope this ain't some shit that they do. Because you ain't supposed to be out here messing around with no shit like that. You feel me? That shit kills your brain and it messed with your brain, which made her do what she did to her boyfriend. Dismembered the man and everything. Like, guts, head, y'all already heard what Angie done said.
Sometimes the people put on trial are so clearly guilty, yet the jury thinks otherwise. With that in mind, here's our list of the top 10 most shocking not guilty verdicts in US history. Is there a particular case that stands out to you? Let us know in the comments down below, and let's get on with the list. Number 10. O.J. Simpson. In 1994, O.J. Simpson was tried for the deaths of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman. As O.J. was a former FNL star and actor, the trial received intense media coverage. He was represented by Johnny Crockett, who made headlines with an argument about the fit of a glove in evidence during the trial. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. OJ's lawyers argued that the police had mishandled evidence and that there was reasonable doubt as to OJ's guilt. Now, the jury found him not guilty, but he was later found liable for the deaths in a civil suit. But it's not a complete surprise that OJ was eventually held accountable in a civil suit, as OJ even wrote a book about this crime. It's called If I Did It: Confessions of a Killer. Yeah, but after getting away with his crime, he later served 9 years of a 33-year sentence in a Nevada prison for various charges, including kidnapping, robbery, and weapon charges.
Case with him is very crazy because they had all that evidence. I mean, he still went to jail for other reasons, but for this particular reason, and then you went and wrote a book about it. I mean, come on, man.
Charges. Number 9. Casey Anthony. Casey Anthony was the mother to Caylee Anthony, who went missing. On July 15, 2008, Caylee was reported missing in a 911 call made by her grandmother, Cindy, who said she'd not seen her for 31 days. According to what Cindy told the operators, Casey had given various explanations as to Caylee's whereabouts before eventually saying she had not seen her for weeks. Casey later called the police and falsely told the police dispatcher that Caylee had been kidnapped by a nanny on June 9th. She then lied to the police officers about everything and was charged with first-degree homicide in October 2008 and pleaded not guilty. On December 11th, 2008, Caylee's skeletal remains were found with a blanket inside a laundry bag in a wooded area near Casey's family house. Relying largely on circumstantial evidence, the prosecution alleged Casey wished to free herself from her parental responsibilities and ended the life of her daughter. murder. On July 5th, 2011, a jury found Casey not guilty of first-degree homicide and aggravated mistreatment of Kaylee, but guilty of 4 misdemeanor counts of providing false information to a law enforcement officer. A juror told People magazine, "She seems like a horrible person, but the prosecutors did not give us enough evidence to convict. They gave us a lot of stuff that makes us think she probably did something wrong, but not beyond a reasonable doubt." Number 8. Isaac Turnbow.
This situation right here, a lot of us, you know what I'm saying, been and heard about her and yeah, we heard about her.
Isaac Turnbow and Declan Lyons worked together and seemed to be close friends. Due to this, in 2002, when Declan was found dead with a bullet wound to the head, Isaac did not cross the minds of anyone as a potential suspect. Unfortunately, Isaac couldn't keep his mouth shut, and he confessed to the crime to multiple friends after getting intoxicated. He couched the statement in jokes about being involved in other national tragedies, but the case was so specific that one of his friends felt that they had to approach Declan's mother, who then told police. During the trial, Isaac's defense said that he couldn't possibly be found guilty on the admission of the crime if he wasn't going to also be charged with the other crimes he joked about being involved in. Because of this, the case was closed and he was considered not guilty. But yet again, he would directly confess to the crime using details of the crime which had not been made known to the public. But because of the state's double jeopardy laws, he couldn't be tried for a second admission, even though he was directly confessing. So he is still out there. He is still free today. Number 7.
You mean to tell me this guy, drunk, telling the biz, everybody, then go ahead and say about some other stuff that they might not think is true, but what, eliminate the evidence to see if this situation is. So, I don't understand why, you know, these people wasn't found guilty. This situation happened in 2002, so I'm very unaware of this. That happened. Maybe I heard about it, but wasn't paying attention as much as I am now.
Number 7. Sam Shepard. In 1954, Dr. Sam Shepard was convicted of bludgeoning his pregnant wife to death in their home outside Cleveland, Ohio. He was adamant that he was not guilty, claiming that a bushy-haired intruder had committed the crime. Sam received intense media coverage, which he claimed biased the jury. Then in 1966, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned his conviction, ruling that he had not received a fair trial. He was retried in 1966 and acquitted. An adding silver lining to this is that The Fugitive is supposedly based on this case, although he didn't look that much like Harrison Ford. Number 6. Belva Gardner. In Chicago in 1924, Walter Law was found dead in the front seat of Belva's car with the weapon that was used and a bottle of gin sitting next to him. Belva was found later in her apartment wearing bloody clothes, and she told police that she had found him dead. She even admitted to having a weapon for protection and going drinking with Walter. Now, police arrested her, but she was later acquitted of the death. Her entire defense was that she didn't remember what happened that night. Belva and her lawyer presented a case like she was a fallen socialite who couldn't have done it. She was fashionable, charming, and supposedly a high-class woman, and the jury bought that hook, line, and sinker. Not to mention that it was an all-male jury, so I'm sure that was taken into account.
You mean to tell me she was able to dress nice and look all sexual and seductive in their times, not the shit we see now, or damn near nudity, but in those times where it was real classy and the jewels and the colors and the shine of the gold, you know what I'm saying? So she was able to get away and had point blank evidence on her? That's crazy.
Number 5. Harry K. Thaw. On June 25th, 1906, at New York City's Madison Square Garden, in front of hundreds of people, Harry Thaw shot Stanford White in the face with many witnesses, hearing him scream, "I did it because he ruined my wife. He had it coming to him. He took advantage of the girl and then abandoned her." Now, press coverage was high, as many deemed this the trial of the century. The district attorney didn't want to prosecute. Instead, he wanted Harry declared insane and treated in a mental hospital. And when Harry's lawyer agreed, he was fired because Harry wanted to go to trial. After all, he believed he was justified in ending the life of Stanford. 2 trials later, he was found not guilty due to temporary insanity and sentenced to life in a criminally insane hospital. Now, no shock, money is the real reason Harry was acquitted. His mom had been paying people off his entire life to keep the family reputation as clean as possible, and she spent $500,000 on a team of doctors to have him deemed temporarily insane. So that's nice.
Damn, you mean to tell me they was out here paying motherfuckers off and paying this person off to keep a good clean reputation, even though they was doing some slime, dirt ass shit. No, man, them times back in them times, boy, money ruled everything just like they do now. But back then, money was so different that it really ruled things in such a crazy way that you can't even do that shit now because it's so messed up.
That's nice. Number 4, Lorena Bobbitt. Lorena Bobbitt became a household name for mutilating and disposing of her husband's genitals. According to her, throughout their marriage, she was repeatedly and consistently physically, emotionally, and sexually mistreated. She silently dealt with this for years until one night her husband John came home drunk and forced himself on her before passing out. While recovering, everything snapped and she took a kitchen knife and removed his genitals. She claimed that when she fled the scene with John Wayne's private parts and the knife, she was unaware of what she had done. The jury believed the victim's mistreatment by her husband caused her to reach a mental state where she was beyond controlling her actions and found her not guilty of the malicious wounding of her husband, although she did have to undergo a psychiatric evaluation for 45 days.
That's crazy. She did what she did to her husband because he was forcing himself on her. Now, why couldn't he just be like some of the other guys? Just, hey, she wasn't trying to get down, you know what I'm saying? Well, you're going to do what you got to do with somebody else that's wanting what you want. And then that's going to eventually make it where y'all have a divorce because, you know what I'm saying, the shit just not working out. But you still have your genitals and you still will be able to use what you like using evidently. Just, I don't understand why people force themselves when there's somebody out there that want what you want.
Number 3, George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman fatally shot high school student Trayvon Martin on the night of February 26, 2012 in Sanford, Florida. George was the neighborhood watch coordinator for the gated community where Trayvon was temporarily staying and where the shooting took place. Following an earlier call from George, police arrived within 2 minutes of a gunshot during a scuffle in which he shot Trayvon. George was taken into custody, treated for head injuries, and then questioned for 5 hours. The police chief said that George was released for lack of evidence and the lack of legal grounds for arrest, and that he had the right to defend himself with lethal force. However, 6 weeks later, amid widespread, intense, and contradictory media coverage and misleading reporting, George was charged with homicide by a special prosecutor appointed by Governor Rick Scott. George's trial began on June 10, 2013, and on July 13, 2013, a jury acquitted him of second-degree homicide and of manslaughter charges. Number 2, Lizzie Borden. The Lizzie Borden case has been preserved in the public's memory through a popular rhyme. Lizzie Borden took an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. The deaths of Andrew and Abby Borden happened on August 4th, 1892 in Fall River, Massachusetts. At about 11:15 a.m., Lizzie discovered her father dead, repeatedly struck in the head with a sharp instrument. Upstairs, his wife's body was found, even more brutally mutilated. No weapon was found, though an axe found in the basement was suspected. After the trial began, the prosecution presented the infamous head of the axe that was thought to be the weapon that ended their lives. A friend of Lizzie also testified seeing her burn a dress after the crime, but Lizzie claimed she burned the dress because it was covered in paint. Nevertheless, the prosecution couldn't conclusively prove that she and no one else had ended their lives, and in the end she was acquitted given the circumstantial evidence.
Now, back in them times, they ain't have nothing like we do now, so that's crazy to hear that she did that, you know, with the axe. You know, when you thinking about doing something like that, you got to be very angry to even go through with shit like that. I just don't understand how people can be so violent and, you know, they're so mad. Like, you have the greatest thing a lot of people don't have that was taken away from them. And that's life, you know.
And coming in at number 1 is Kyle Rittenhouse. On August 25th, 2020, Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old from Illinois, fatally shot 2 men and wounded another man in Kennesaw, Wisconsin. The shootings occurred during the protests, riots, and civil unrest that followed the shooting of Jacob Blake. Joseph Rosebaum chased Rittenhouse into a parking lot and grabbed the barrel of his weapon, and Rittenhouse shot Joseph 4 times at close range. Rittenhouse then fled and was pursued by a crowd, and Anthony Hoover, Hooper, who was fatally shot once in the chest by Rittenhouse after he struck Rittenhouse with his skateboard and grabbed Rittenhouse's weapon. Gage Grosskreutz pointed a weapon at Rittenhouse and then was shot by Rittenhouse once in the right arm, and he survived. Kenosha County prosecutors charged Rittenhouse with 2 counts of homicide, 1 count of attempted homicide, 2 counts of reckless endangerment, 1 count of unlawful possession of a firearm, and 1 count of curfew violation. His trial lasted from November 1st to 19th, 2021. Prosecutors sought to show Rittenhouse as a criminal gunman, while defense lawyers argued that Rittenhouse had acted in self-defense, asserting that his attackers were part of a mob that attacked him in the street like an animal, and that he used force necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. Judge Bruce Schroeder dismissed the unlawful possession charge and the curfew violation charge for being legally unsupported, and a jury found Rittenhouse not guilty of the remaining charges. Well, that's all for our list of the top 10 most shocking not guilty verdicts in US history. Which on our list shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments down below.